He forgave sins, accepted worship, claimed eternity, but never said, "I am God." Or did he? This is Faith Explained, where biblical truth comes to light through reason, evidence, and spiritual clarity.
Jesus never walked into a synagogue and said, "Hey everyone, I am God." But what he did say was far more powerful. He claimed the authority to forgive sins, something only God can do. He allowed people to worship him, something no righteous prophet ever accepted. And he referred to himself as the Son of Man, a direct reference to Daniel chapter 7, where the Son of Man comes with the clouds of heaven and is given authority, glory, and sovereign power. In his culture, these claims weren't vague. They were understood and they were dangerous. One of the clearest moments came in John chapter 8. Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am. Not I was, not I existed. I am," echoing the divine name God gave Moses in Exodus. I am who I am. The crowd's reaction? They picked up stones to kill him. Why? Because they believed he had committed blasphemy by claiming the very name of God. Jesus was eventually crucified, not for what he did, but for what he said. During his trial, the high priest asked directly, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus answered, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Again, a direct reference to the divine figure in Daniel. The high priest tore his clothes and said, "You have heard the blasphemy." The charge was clear. Jesus was not killed as a rebel. He was killed for claiming equality with God. Some claim that Jesus never actually claimed to be God, and that those ideas were added later by his followers. But this doesn't hold up historically. First, while Jesus didn't often use the exact words, "I am God," his words and actions made those claims unmistakable to his original audience. Second, it's often said that Jesus' divinity was invented centuries later, possibly at the Council of Nicaea, but that's not accurate. Jesus was being worshipped decades before Nicaea by people who had either known him directly or learned from those who did. And we shouldn't miss what Jesus did, not just what he said. Jesus claimed authority over the Sabbath, a sacred institution given by God himself. He calmed a storm with a word, something only the creator of nature could do. He claimed the power to raise the dead and judge the world. In John chapter 10, he said, "I and the Father are one." And when Thomas encountered the risen Jesus, he said, "My Lord and my God." Jesus didn't correct him. He received it. Jesus wasn't executed for being a threat to Rome, nor arrested for breaking civic laws. He was condemned by the religious leaders for blasphemy. Throughout his ministry, Jesus forgave sins, accepted worship, and spoke with the authority of God himself. To the Jewish leaders, this wasn't just controversial, it was dangerous. In their own words, "We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God." That's from John chapter 19, verse 7. They didn't kill Jesus for being a prophet. They killed him because they understood exactly what he was claiming. Some say that Jesus' divinity was an idea that evolved over time, but the historical record disagrees. Within just 20 years of the resurrection, Paul was writing letters that declared Jesus as divine. In Philippians chapter 2, he writes that Jesus was in very nature God. And in Colossians chapter 1, he calls Jesus the image of the invisible God. But it wasn't just Paul. Early church fathers like Ignatius of Antioch, writing in the early 100s, called Jesus our God. This was not a late invention. The belief in Jesus as divine was embedded in the Christian movement from the start. But maybe the most powerful argument for the truth of Jesus' divinity is the change in his disciples. During Jesus' ministry, there was commotion everywhere he went. Crowds, miracles, teaching. But after his crucifixion, the excitement evaporated. People returned home, sorrowful and disillusioned. Jesus had not fulfilled their expectations. His movement appeared over. By all appearances, what he taught and what he stood for had died with him. And yet, something changed. Those same followers who had been frightened and scattered suddenly began preaching everywhere that Jesus had risen from the dead. They didn't spread this claim from a safe distance or in comfort, but in the face of brutal persecution. They were beaten, imprisoned, tortured, and killed, yet not one is known to have recanted their testimony. They insisted that they had seen Jesus alive after his death, spoken with him, touched him, eaten with him. This kind of courage is unexplainable. Unless something truly happened, unless they genuinely encountered the risen Christ, their boldness would be irrational. People just don't willingly die for what they know to be a lie, but they will die for what they know to be true. And these men died proclaiming that Jesus was not only alive, but that he was Lord and God. Still, some today say, Jesus was just a good moral teacher and nothing more. But that option isn't really available. C.S. Lewis famously pointed out, Jesus didn't leave room for that kind of middle ground. A man who claimed to forgive sins, who said he existed before Abraham, who declared himself one with the Father, is either deluded, deceptive, or divine. To call him a great teacher while rejecting his most outrageous claim is logically inconsistent. Lewis put it this way: what should we make of a man, himself unrobbed and untrodden on, who announced that he forgave you for treading on other men's toes and stealing other men's money? Asinine fatuity is the kindest description we should give of his conduct. Jesus forgave sins committed against others. He behaved as though he were the one chiefly offended in every human offense. That only makes sense if he truly was God, the God whose law is broken and whose love is wounded in every sin. Many religious leaders make big claims, but Jesus, he backed his up with a miracle that no one else has ever replicated: the resurrection. According to multiple eyewitness accounts, he was actually seen alive after his death by over 500 people. If the resurrection really happened, and the evidence points strongly that it did, then everything Jesus said about himself is vindicated. So, is Jesus really God? He claimed divine authority. He used divine titles. He was killed for divine claims. He was seen alive by hundreds and rose in a way no mortal ever has. If that's true, then Jesus isn't just someone to admire. He's someone to worship, to follow, and to surrender to. If this helped you get more clarity and inspired you, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share this with someone you care about.